Okay, here's the transcript with all the timestamps removed. Time. A concept with countless definitions and perspectives, something we can never fully comprehend. The life of a human being is measured by time. The development of all things is measured by time. Even the birth or death of this universe is calculated by people using time. Humans have always sought to define time, understand time, and above all, control time. This desire to grasp and control time is perhaps most clearly expressed through our constant obsession with time travel. The story of the connection between humanity and time seems limited at first glance, but in reality, it is incredibly vast and profound. In this video, Bootstrap Paradox will bring you a completely new perspective, one we haven't discussed together before. Hello, viewers. This is a video about the philosophy and physics of time travel. Channel intro graphic/music. Let's put aside the countless concepts, forms, and ways time exists that we see depicted in movies like this. Or like this. We certainly need something more tangible to discuss time. Firstly, it can be said that time is absolutely not the same in every situation. Perception, concepts, and the way time is divided vary greatly depending on the perspective of each individual and each field. We will start with the easiest point, dividing the types of time. First, there is time from the perspective of science. Simply put, scientific time is the division of time into uniform intervals, measured by clocks as the tool. It has no color, no qualities. Morning is like noon, afternoon is like evening. Similarly, but on a broader scale, winter and summer are like spring and autumn, regardless of whether someone is in prison or free in the world. Time flows irreversibly. Time doesn't stop, doesn't wait. It just flows, just pulls along. This is the time that is assumed to be uniform for everyone, and humans cannot participate in or change it in any way. It is merely the succession of all things, completely external, cold, mechanical. Easy to understand. It's science, after all. But if we want to participate in time, humans still have another way of dividing it. That is physiological time. This is understood as the type of time that is somewhat influenced by human impact. It can be called growth time. Although still limited, not yet reaching the realm of consciousness, it already contains a human element. Therefore, it distorts, stretches, and contracts depending on the person, their age, and even a bit of their mood. Youth has a more distinct physiological time than old age because, in old age, the body undergoes almost no significant development. For example, a wound on a 5-year-old child will heal faster than a wound on a 50-year-old person. One level above physiological time, related to human perception, is psychological time. Psychological time is measured by emotions, mood, and impressions. Depending on the circumstances, people perceive time as short or long. When we are young, we feel time always passes very quickly because we constantly encounter new things and have many joys. We are swept into the flow of society with countless pieces of knowledge, relationships, and tasks that need to be resolved in a single day. It's not for nothing that people say, a day in prison feels like 1,000 years outside. When freedom is lost, time then seems endless. Those are the most basic, purest understandings of time. But that's not enough. To grasp and control time, we need a truly deep study of it. That deep study must surely come from philosophy, the science of all sciences. There are different schools of thought regarding the concept of time in philosophy. Most reflections on time come from Western philosophy. Eastern philosophy, on the other hand, presents very little on this subject. Almost all famous figures, the leading Western philosophers, have discussed time as a serious topic requiring deep investigation. In the years 544 to 583 BC, this figure made an incredibly famous statement that we still repeat today. He is Heraclitus, a famous philosopher of ancient Western philosophy. Born into an aristocratic family in Ionia, he nonetheless lived a very poor and solitary life. Through the eyes of Heraclitus, everything in our world is constantly changing, moving, and developing ceaselessly. The world is like a flow, constantly drifting away. Based on this perspective, the thesis, "No man ever steps in the same river twice," was born. Everything is always changing. These changes occur successively. They oppose each other yet also give rise to each other, like light and dark, hot and cold, day and night. Nothing is as stable as a river, yet nothing changes as continuously as a river. The moment it stands still is also the moment it is changing. Time possesses motion. It never stands still. However, not everyone agrees with this. I mean, not everyone agrees that time or everything is always in motion. The most prominent example is Parmenides. He argued that being is eternal, and all change is merely appearance. Also in this vein, the philosopher Plato believed that, besides the changing world of phenomena, there exists a world of ideas of the soul, an eternal, immutable world beyond time, meaning there are worlds unaffected by time. Time naturally becomes the moving image of eternal immobility. Over 200 years passed, until around 300 BC, we gradually saw new schools of thought emerge. For the philosopher Aristotle, the nature of nature is change, and he defined the philosophy of nature as the investigation of changing things. Accordingly, time is the measure of motion, between before and after. Time is continuous, because it belongs to continuity. Only the present time is the real time. Then we witness the birth of a famous philosophical school called Stoicism. Its main idea is contentment, one of the most valuable elements in life, a life lived quietly, peacefully, and calmly. This peace is found through self-restraint or self-mastery, including the ability to control desires and master oneself, not letting oneself indulge in passions. According to the Stoic school, time has no substance, but all existing things in motion are precisely in time. Time resides in the life of the world, meaning creation, because the universe's nature is creation. Therefore, the sage Epictetus, a representative philosopher of the Stoic school, follows and accepts time, living in accordance with time to harmonize with creation. So, what about modern philosophy? In the latter half of the 17th century, we have Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, a polymath who played a significant role in European politics and diplomatic matters of his era. He holds equally important positions in both the history of philosophy and the history of mathematics. In philosophy, he is best known for his optimism. His conclusion was that our universe is, in a limited sense, the best possible universe that God could create. Leibniz argued that time, like space, is entirely relative, not an entity. Space is the order of things that can coexist, while time is the order of things that can succeed one another, but are related. That is a dilemma of time. Because how can one explain the dual nature of time, being both successive and continuous, both distinct and encompassing the moments that form it? In short, time is not one, but two. It is both a natural, objective, encompassing law and a subjective concept of human beings. Only humans have consciousness of time. Humans are the only creatures aware that they will die and aware that time passes continuously. Where humans are, there must be time for existence to occur. In Buddhism, when discussing the issue of time and related aspects of the world, the Buddha often taught that, with limited insight and a mind full of delusions, humans cannot fully comprehend the matter of the universe's origin. Humans can only understand generally that the formation and destruction of the world occur over many long periods. The duration of each life cycle in each realm often depends on the collective karma of beings in that realm. The Buddha taught his disciples not to dwell on the past, nor to have excessive desires for the future. The present is the most precious and meaningful moment in the sublimation of each person's life. By dwelling in that way of life, humans will realize the oneness between self and others, between humans and all things, and thereby recognize that the self is just a distant shadow. And one's existence always depends on the existence of others and countless causes and conditions. Those are the most representative things humanity knows about time through the lens of philosophy. But what about the dream of grasping and controlling time? What have we achieved? To realize it, philosophy is perhaps not the wisest path. We need another way. Physics, perhaps, will show us that path. Modern understanding of time and causality mostly originates from general relativity. Einstein combined space and time into one, creating the concept of spacetime, explaining the workings of both in an extremely complex and subtle manner. It has been over 100 years since general relativity was born and experimentally verified with extremely high precision. Therefore, physicists believe that general relativity is the key to accurately describing the causal structure of the universe. For many decades, people have tried to use general relativity to analyze whether time travel is feasible. Some equations they derived show that time travel is entirely compatible with relativity. But physics must still rely on the foundation of mathematics, and these equations would be meaningless if they didn't correspond to real things. Time travel is the concept of motion considered to transport a person or body or another object from one point in time to another. It's understood in a similar sense to movement between different points in space and is generally accomplished by a hypothetical invention called a time machine. Movement can occur from the present back to the past or forward into the future. Time travel is a recognized category in philosophy and science fiction. It receives some support from theoretical physics, often involving theories of quantum mechanics, string theory, or wormholes. To be fair, traveling to the future is much easier than traveling to the past. There is no general consensus on which written work represents the earliest example of ancient time travel stories, as some early works only contain vague elements hinting at time travel. Ancient myths and folklore often include details resembling travel to the future for the main character. For example, in Hindu mythology, the Mahabharata mentions the story of King Revata, who traveled to heaven to meet the creator Brahma and was shocked upon returning to Earth to realize that many ages had passed. Basically, there are currently 3 common methods often mentioned for traveling to the future: hibernation and waking up at a future time, the simplest way. Second, traveling at extremely high velocity, according to relativity. The astronaut would be younger than reality because the time they experience is shorter than the time for people on Earth. Did you know that when traveling between continents by plane, we are even time traveling, but with a very small time difference? Third, we could get close to the event horizon of a black hole. Because the closer you get to a black hole, the strong gravity slows time down. In the movie Interstellar, Cooper explores Miller near the black hole Gargantua. Only a few hours pass for him, but 23 years pass for the reference frame outside Miller. So, what is the feasibility of each option? Are they truly useful? With the first method, also the most feasible, we can put ourselves into a state of near-suspended animation, then wait for technology to advance and wake up. In the world today, there are actually people undergoing cryopreservation like this. But that's not really time travel at all. Basically, time still passes. The third method is overwhelming, not feasible with current technology. Think about it. Thousands of years of scientific development have only just gotten us to the moon. How many more years will it take for a person to travel out of the solar system, let alone get near a black hole? Therefore, we will focus most on option number 2. For example, we have an experiment that requires a very long time to see the results, say about 10,000 years. Assuming time travel technology exists, we would put the experiment on a spaceship traveling close to the speed of light, then wait for it to return to Earth and get the results. If this idea succeeds, it not only helps us solve the problem of waiting for experimental results, but could potentially solve all calculable problems, depending on the speed of the spaceship. However, there are difficulties with this approach. The biggest problem is the immense amount of energy needed to accelerate. Currently, there is no technology to create a vehicle exceeding the speed of light because we still haven't had any breakthrough escaping Einstein's legendary equation, E equals mc squared. An existing object's properties correlate among 3 quantities: energy, speed, and mass. The momentum of an object with mass increases with velocity. An object at the speed of light would have infinite mass. A spaceship wanting to reach the speed of light, its mass would have to equal half the Earth. We certainly don't have the ability to build such a thing. To accelerate an object with mass to the speed of light requires either finite acceleration over infinite time or infinite acceleration over finite time. Both methods require an infinite amount of energy, which we currently have no way to achieve. Only massless particles can reach the photonic speed of light. Things with mass can only get close to the speed of light. But we might be able to do it if we solve the problem by creating matter with negative energy. Still following the equation E equals mc squared, to create negative energy matter means its mass must be negative, because the speed of light is always a constant. Quantum mechanics tells us that, theoretically, it's possible to create negative energy matter in extremely small quantities and with extremely short existence times. At the same time, there's no evidence proving we absolutely cannot create negative energy. Furthermore, we can find equations allowing time travel without borrowing these exotic materials. Therefore, this problem lies only in our current technical state or our limited understanding of quantum mechanics. Traveling to the future sounds difficult and distant, but the most noteworthy part must be this. Traveling back to the past is truly a difficult problem to solve, both in reality and on theoretical paper. If we view time as a linear flow according to Newton, time travel is basically like a train running on tracks. When the flow of time passes, it always leaves tracks behind it. So, is it possible to go backward along these tracks? Because simply put, it's just about opening the train door, jumping off, and then walking back along the tracks. But the hypothesis here is, are you sure you won't derail from the track? Unlike reality, the track of time here is invisible and formless. You can feel it, but you cannot draw it precisely. So if you jump off the time train, how do you know which way to go back? Derailing and falling into infinity is very easy. Even if you successfully return to the past, it's not certain you can return to the present. How can you follow the time train when you are left so far behind? You run for 1 second. The time train also runs for 1 second. That's why time travelers might get stuck in the past. Nothing is impossible. If only the time travel device has enough velocity to break the time limit, then everything is completely different. The best part about traveling to the past will be here. These are the paradoxes that will arise if we go to the past. The most famous and hardest to solve is the grandfather paradox. The grandfather paradox is a problem within the paradoxes of time travel. Simply understand it as a problem that cannot be understood or has no solution. It was first described by the science fiction writer René Barjavel in his work Le Voyageur Imprudent, published in 1943. However, similar problems were described earlier. A typical example is the novella by his bootstraps by Robert A. Heinlein. The grandfather paradox is presented based on the following hypothesis. A man travels back in time to the past and kills his grandfather before his grandfather marries his grandmother. The result is that his father would never be born. This leads to the man himself never being born. So how could he have traveled back to the past? But if he didn't go back to the past to kill his grandfather, then his grandfather must still be alive. And that means he would still be born and could travel through time to kill his grandfather. These two situations deny the existence of both scenarios. This is a type of logical paradox. Although the theory's name is the grandfather paradox, it doesn't specifically talk about the impossibility of someone being born. Rather, the concept encompasses any action that makes traveling back to the past impossible from the start. The name grandfather paradox is the most common term used to describe the paradoxical phenomenon of time travel. Another example is when you use scientific knowledge from scientist A to create a time machine, then use it to go back to the past and kill scientist A. If scientist A is killed before inventing that scientific knowledge, then the time machine would never have existed. And if it didn't exist, how could you go back to the past to kill scientist A? A vicious cycle of causes and effects just repeats itself. This leads us to the next paradox of traveling to the past, called the Predestination Paradox. The Predestination Paradox, or Causal Loop, is a time travel paradox often used in science fiction works. A causal time loop involves event 1 happening first, being the cause, or at least one of the causes, of event 2 which happens later. And through time travel, event 2 then becomes the cause of event 1. The paradox occurs when the time traveler falls into a loop of predetermined events when they travel back in time to the past. In this case, event 2 would be the event of the time traveler returning to the past, and event 1 is something the time traveler did in the past that made them want to return to the past to fix it. This paradox raises the hypothesis that time travelers have no way to change an event. For example, when a person goes back to the past to save someone from a traffic accident, and while in the past, that person drives their car to the location before the accident happens. accidentally hitting the very person they came back to save and causing their death. The death that made their future self want to return to the past. This theory relates to the ontological paradox in that there are things whose origin cannot be determined. In this case, it's the reason for the time travel journey. The paradox doesn't imply there's a grand plan from a higher source. It merely asserts that time is immutable. Time travel is always a matter of destiny. The chain of events can still occur through causality, rather than by a supernatural origin. Similar to the Predestination Paradox, we have the Bootstrap Paradox. When an object or piece of information from the future is sent to the past, it influences the existence of that information or object in the present. Described with an example, you go back to the past humming a song by your favorite singer. Then the singer hears it and gets the idea for a new song. So, who created the song? Neither you nor the singer. The Bootstrap Paradox always creates a mystery about the origin of information in many novels and movies involving time travel. To make time travel a feasible task, we must resolve the paradoxes. A common misconception in science fiction is that paradoxes can be created. Time travelers are often warned not to change the past too much and not to repeat their own past. Examples of this are found in many movies about time travel, like the Back to the Future trilogy. But in physics, a paradox isn't actually an event that can really happen, but rather a purely theoretical concept used to indicate a contradiction within the theory itself. In other words, the self-consistency paradox doesn't just mean time travel is dangerous, it also implies it might be entirely impossible. This is one of the motivations behind the chronology protection conjecture by theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking. Hawking believed that time travel is impossible. Hawking even conducted a simple experiment to prove his point. He wrote an invitation, clearly stating the location and time he was hosting a party, and sent it thousands of years into the future to invite future people to come back and attend his party. But how to send that letter to people thousands of years in the future? Turns out it's very simple. Put the invitation inside a metal box made very sturdy, then bury it in the ground. Thousands of years later, when future people dig it up, they will know Hawking's location and even his GPS coordinates on the timeline. If a machine to travel back to the past exists, future people would surely come to Hawking's party. Because, after all, he is a theoretical physicist with enough credibility among humankind. Unfortunately, Hawking waited all day, but no future people came to attend his party. But that conjecture still hasn't convinced other scientists. And instead of ruling out time travel because of paradoxes, we can eliminate the paradox itself, and the universe becomes much more interesting. To resolve the time travel paradoxes, theoretical physicist Igor Dmitrievich Novikov proposed the theory of self-consistency conjecture. The basic idea of this theory is that you can travel to the past, but you cannot change the past. Novikov pointed out that if you go back 5 minutes and try to destroy the time machine, you will find it absolutely impossible to do so, because the laws of physics will try to intervene and protect self-consistency from being violated. Applying this to Hawking's case, you could travel back in time to the past, but you couldn't change the past in any way. Even appearing before Hawking at the party would be impossible. Physics always has a way to maintain consistency and the history it has created. Therefore, if you really could travel to the past, perhaps you would only exist there as an observer, like someone with only view-only permission in a Google Doc file, without editing rights. But what's the benefit of time travel if you can't change the past? At least it allows us to confirm history. If you can't change history, at least you know what really happened and can verify if what historians recorded is correct. However, even Novikov's self-consistency principle alone cannot resolve all the paradoxes. Instead, this man proposed a more feasible theory. He is Barak Shoshani, an assistant professor of physics at Brock University, Canada. Shoshani proposed a different idea about time travel, involving multiple histories, where we can actually change a specific history. In other words, Shoshani's idea is similar to what we see in Marvel movies, that there are many timelines existing parallel to each other simultaneously. This could resolve any time travel paradox, including the grandfather paradox. Shoshani states that when you exit the time machine, you enter a different timeline, not your original one. In that timeline, you can do whatever you want, even kill your grandfather, without changing anything in your original timeline. Because the grandfather in your main timeline is still alive, your father will still be born, and so will you. No paradox occurs here. For many years, Shashini has studied time travel paradoxes. Now he is increasingly convinced that time travel is entirely possible, but only if our universe allows for the existence of multiple timelines. So the question arises, can there be multiple timelines in the universe? From the perspective of quantum mechanics, the answer seems to be yes. But these are just conjectures. Shashini is still searching for a time travel theory that combines multiple histories and is fully compatible with general relativity. Of course, even if they find such a theory, it won't be enough to prove that time travel is possible. But this at least means time travel isn't completely ruled out by the self-consistency paradox. You know, the present will eventually become the past. So we don't need to go back to the past to change the future. Change something right now, so that in the future, you won't wish you had a time machine anymore. That is truly controlling time. And our time for today is also up. Very happy that you stayed until this moment. Don't forget to support Vu Trung Nguyen Thuy by subscribing and waiting for the next videos. For now, on behalf of the team, Viet Quang says goodbye, see you again, and wishes you a good day.